Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Poetically Christian, and welcome to another edition of Should Christians Play? The series where we go between the lines of the ESRB to answer the questions, should a Christian play? And is this game accessible for me? Hi guys, my name is Derek and I'm a legally blind preacher and gamer, and we do this kind of thing all the time. And if you don't want to miss any of our future reviews, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on Poetically Christian along with that like button, as it lets us know that it's helping you and that you'd like to see more. And if you're watching on Twitch, guys, on Poetically Christian Gamer, go ahead and hit that follow button. You'll be able to join us the next time we are live. Today, guys, we are reviewing Friday the 13th, the game, for the spooky season here. And we're going to review this game like we always do on two fronts. Is the game physically accessible to play for the low vision and blind, deaf and hard of hearing, and the motor disabled? And of course, is the game accessible for a Christian, morally accessible for a Christian to play? And is there wraparounds for this game to make it playable? Well, you guys know, obviously, with a game like Friday the 13th being in the spooky season, a lot of times Christians look for things that are maybe accessible for them, and we'll get there, guys. But first of all, as far as for the physical accessibility for the low vision and the blind, there isn't a whole lot in this game. This game was originally released in 2017 for the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. And there's just not a lot here, guys. There's not even so much as subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing. There is very, very limited button remapping for the motor disabled. And of course, for the low vision and blind, there's no menu narration, no navigation whatsoever. The only thing there is Jason, as the game wears on, gets different abilities. And by using the vision ability, it turns things red, which I will show you in gameplay here. You have a map, and it's very hard to see. As you can see, a mini map here, and you have to kind of move this little icon around to drift you to where you need to go. And of course, you can see I'm already approaching people, and they are hitting me. But I'm stunned. I'm trying to show you the abilities here. You have the vision ability that kind of turns the houses red that they're in, and things like that to kind of help you. So from a low vision, that's kind of helpful. But you also have what they call a stock ability, which kind of turns your footsteps silent but makes theirs loud, which that helps you as well. But if you are completely blind, there would be no way of playing this game without some sighted assistance. And for the low vision, as you can see, everything is very dark and kind of has a grainy look, which also makes it kind of difficult to see things. So from that standpoint, it's also kind of hard to play. But there is some things, like I said, that helps you out and makes the game somewhat playable, but it's difficult. Morally, I would, or overall for the physical accessibility, guys, I would have to give this game a D. There's just not much here. There's no navigation, no narration, no large text, although the text is on dark backgrounds and it is white writing. It's kind of small to read on the menus and things like that. There is not a lot on the menus that you have to go through, however, so that's not that bad. But there's no way of going through it without some assistance or some memorization, things like that. So that would make it more difficult than it needs to be. So overall, I would say this game is not very playable. It just doesn't have a whole lot going for it subtitle-wise. Like I said, there's not even subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing. There's virtually hardly any button remapping on this game either for the motor disabled, so that would make it difficult. Yeah, this would be a hard one to recommend to play physically. Low vision, it might be possible with a couple of those abilities, but overall it would be more difficult than it needs to be. But of course, in 2017, games were just kind of in their infancy with accessibility, and this game kind of shows it, as there's just not a lot going on with it. Okay, morally. Obviously, you're playing a game called Friday the 13th, and you're playing as Jason Voorhees. Um, kind of this guy been brought back from the grave to kind of hunt down these teenagers and things like that. So from a moral standpoint, obviously, it doesn't have the best of backgrounds, but obviously a lot of times we are able to separate fantasy from reality. However, this game has extreme violence. It's rated M for mature, for blood and gore, for sexual content, and for language. And it has all those things, guys. There is some wraparounds. There is not a way to turn off the dialogue, like let's say you don't want to hear the language or something like that. There is only 2 sound bars on this, one for music and one for games. So if you turn the game down, it turns everything off. So it's not like you could just turn their dialogue off, which I wish we had that ability, and then you would be able to, do things like that. There is a way to avoid the sexual content. Some of the ladies are risquely dressed, of course, as you would expect from this kind of a game. But you can go into the customization section and adjust each and every one of their outfits on this game. Jason included, and all the counselors. So you can dress them more modestly and avoid that. There is one character named Tiffany, though, that wears kind of some very short shorts. And that is in every outfit that she has, and there's no way of avoiding that. But there is ways of covering them up otherwise to make it more acceptable. But if that is a temptation for you guys, as I always say, make sure you be aware of that. Use your own discernment, your guidance of the Holy Spirit, and your knowledge of God's Word, and just the feeling that you have within your heart, whether you feel comfortable with something like that, whether that would be a temptation for you. I'm legally blind. I went ahead and had some sighted assistance for my wife in dressing these folks appropriately, but it is in the game. I just want you to know the language, like I said, that's not avoidable. There's no taking the Lord's name in vain or anything like that, but there is some F-bombs every once in a blue moon, and there is some minor profanities, S and D and things like that. So that is in the game. Of course, the blood and guts. There is a way of avoiding that. You play as Jason against bots offline. There is offline and online. You can play as the counselors, the heroes, try to escape Jason. And of course, you can play as Jason himself, stalking the teenagers. When you play as Jason, you can avoid a little bit of the gore by being able to pick what he calls the animation, or like the execution moves. And there is ones you can pick that are like bloodless and, kind of less gruesome, things like that. Ones where he does like a bear hug and then, kind of puts them down, things like that. But, of course, it is a game where you're trying to take people out. So if that is a temptation, a bother to you, again, that's the premise of the game. Unless you're playing online as the counselors, then you try to avoid Jason and you help your teammates out. There's some good continuity there, some good lessons about helping your fellow man and doing the right thing. You can give health and healing things to your teammates, things like that. So there is teamwork and things like that. But overall, when you play offline, you can only play as Jason, and you cannot play as the counselor. So there's a challenge mode as well. That does have some language and some sexual content, like references to things, no nudity that I saw or anything like that. And of course, some references to drug use, them smoking marijuana, things like that. So again, that's in the game. If that's a deal breaker for you, it is in the game. But it's only in the challenge mode. You don't have to play that mode. It's a separate thing. And there's another one called the virtual cabin, which is in a first-person mode where you kind of look around a cabin, and there is some things in there, some sexual references, like on signs or different things like little innuendos and of course violence and blood, like where you're coming up on a murder scene kind of thing from where Jason had been there. And again, that's not a mode you have to play, but it is in the game. So basically, the only way you could really do this is if I'm playing as the purple Jason, the NES Jason from the 1988 Nintendo game. You like the purple Barney Jason, we call him. You can play as him. You could turn his executions to the ungruesome, bloodless ones, and kind of go around and do that kind of thing. But overall, like I said, I wouldn't recommend this for the young at all, of course, for a child. And I would not recommend this for someone that's not mature in their walk with God either. It would take someone that can separate this fantasy from reality, can separate things like that, and can just, kind of do these things. But you can turn certain things down. Like I said, you can kind of avoid certain things, but you can avoid the blood, but you can't avoid the language that's there every once in a while when they attack you. Things like that, it is there. So if that's a deal breaker, again, that's kind of a rough recommend. The sexual content can be avoided by being able to switch their outfits on the ladies. But again, Tiffany shorts are there, and that's not something you can necessarily get around. But I just kind of wanted to show you what the game looked like in practice. I wish I could have showed you the where they were, the scents, but I wasn't able to find anybody in their houses where they are, so I can kind of look around the map a little bit and see if I can find somebody. But yeah, this game, I would say overall. Oh, okay, here we have somebody. See the red. There we go. The house is red when they go into it, and it lets you know where they are. So that was one of the things I was telling you about for the visually and low vision. That really helps out when you use that ability to be able to see, what house they were in and what they go to, things like that. So I'm not really going to show you any of the executions or any of that kind of thing, but it's definitely a game that's not very playable physically or morally, but it is one that people would wonder about for this kind of time of year, for the spooky season. There are some wraparounds if you are mature in your walk with God, and you're able to avoid a few of these things by switching their clothes and switching the executions, things like that, to the less gory, but you still have the language to deal with, and you still have the ability, the fact that you're in a combat situation where you're, trying to take people out. That's, again, in your own hands, your own judgment, whether that's a deal breaker for you. Just kind of telling you what's in the game. Go ahead and exit out of here. So, if you're looking for Jason, overall, I would give Friday the 13th for physical accessibility a D, as there's just not a whole lot here. There's not much to help the low vision, nothing to help the blind, just a few abilities to be able to see what house they're in a little bit easier. There's not even so much as subtitles to help the deaf and hard of hearing. And for the motor disabled, there is the slightest button remapping, and of course, just your basic sensitivity settings, sliders to be able to adjust certain things, and that is it. So overall, I would give it a D for physical accessibility. And for the moral accessibility, like I said, you do have the ability to change their clothes to make them more modestly dressed. You do have the ability to turn on, some of Jason's finishing moves that are kind of bloodless and less gory and, kind of less violent. For his settings, and you could play as the purple kind of Barney Jason that you can't take seriously, things like that, but you still can't avoid the language that's in it, and things like that, and of course just avoid the fact that you're hunting folks. So again, I would have to give the game overall probably a D for moral Christian accessibility. There are a couple options here to make it less and maybe slightly playable, but I can't give the game a C because there's no way of turning the blood off. There's no way of avoiding the language like we have in some of these other games like Mortal Kombat games. Things like that. So overall, I hope this has helped you guys leading into this time of year. If you're looking for a game, we've reviewed some other ones that hopefully are better for you and better recommendations for you. Go check out, if you missed any of these, an entire playlist called Should Christians Play? Christian Gaming Reviews, guys. I hope this has helped you. If it has, remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, guys, to not miss any of our future reviews. Give us a like to let us know these are helping you and that you enjoy it. Want to see more of these. And if you're watching on Twitch, hit that follow button, guys, as it helps us as well, and you'll be able to join us when we are live. Remember, always, guys, sharing these videos out, liking them, subscribing to the channel helps our ministry immensely, helps us to get godly content out into this world, and helps others, guys, to avoid games that maybe they don't want to see, and of course helps others in their physical disabilities to be able to know whether they can play a game or not. I love you guys. I thank you so much. This has been another edition of Should Christians Play, the series where we go between the lines of the ESRB to answer the questions, should a Christian play? And is this game accessible for me? I love you guys. God loves you. And bless wishes.